Many people spend hundreds of hours in virtual worlds, driving, flying, and walking past in-game advertisements for fake brands. But what if these brands weren't fake? Well, if you have ever played Midnight Club LA, released in 2008, that was in fact the case. Most, if not all, billboards in the game were real brands that Rockstar had partnered with. Brands like Apple and 7-Eleven were placed within the game world in order to catch the eyes of the player. Midnight Club is far from the only game to do this. In another release from 2008, the game Burnout Paradise had political advertisements placed around the map with Obama's face on them. Of course, these billboards were different because they changed over time. Another example is Crazy Taxi, released for the Dreamcast in 1999. As you drove around the city, you could see branded buildings and even destinations for brands such as Pizza Hut, KFC, Tower Records, and Fila. Now it seems that there's two different kinds of ads that have been used in games. These two types are static and dynamic. First, we're going to start with static. These ads are very similar to the ones in Crazy Taxi and Midnight Club. Whether it be buildings, billboards, destinations, like in Crazy Taxi, these never changed. They were always in the game. Another common product is cars. For example, the Pontiac G8 in Vin Diesel's Wheelman video game. This was the only real car brand in the game, and an obvious ploy from Pontiac to get some attention for the G8. Even though this car brand has been discontinued for many years, you can of course still find the G8 in the game. It is also referenced many times throughout the story.
You got one more car to get, Pontiac G8.
Now on to dynamic advertising. These ads seem to mainly consist of billboards and signs placed within the game, things that can be easily changed. A prime example for these ads can be seen in Burnout Paradise. Like mentioned earlier, Obama's face was not always in the game, nor was it seen by every single player of the game. These ads would be targeted to you based on your geographical location, or possibly by things that you have searched online. Advertising within games can be traced all the way back to the 1970s. From my research, the first game that I could find that has an advertisement is 1978's Adventureland. It was a simple advertisement promoting their next game. Over time, more and more games were seen with advertisements placed inside of them. Even some non-game brands decided to make their own game just to advertise their product. Pepsi developed a game called Pepsi-man. It was released in Japan in 1999. Almost every single asset in the game had a Pepsi logo on it. The goal of the game was to run through a town collecting Pepsi cans and avoid getting hit by obstacles or running into them. Once at the end of the level, you got to a vending machine and drank, you guessed it, a Pepsi. If you cleared that level, you would then move on to the next scene as called in the game and do the same thing again. Although this masterpiece seems to have been forgotten over time, you can still buy yourself a copy of it on Amazon for $170.46. Pepsi is far from the only brand to have made their own game. Burger King made 3 very interesting games, and Hooters made a game called Hooters Road Trip, which was developed by Ubisoft. If you'd like to hear more about Ubisoft, stick around to the end and check out my last video. Wow, that's really realistic. That's exactly how I drive to my local Hooters. Although nowadays it doesn't seem like brands are making console games anymore. It seems that they have switched over to mobile games. Last year, Louis Vuitton released a game for the 200th anniversary where you collected 200 candles. Along with the candles, you could also find postcards about Louis's life. Once you found enough candles, you could then open a chest and hopefully there would be a golden ticket inside. With this golden ticket in hand, you could then trade it for an NFT. These NFTs were versions of the postcards found in game. If you were truly lucky, you could have found an NFT made by the famous Beeple. These special version NFTs seem to be worth right around 2,500 or 1.7 ETH. Unlike Louis Vuitton, a much more conventional way of advertising within a game would be to have your product placed directly in the game. One of the most famous games that's known for doing this would be Fortnite. Many brands have signed up to work with this massive hit. Brands are no longer only partnering with games to be seen by the player, but also by the viewers. A perfect example of this is Fortnite, which was the 9th most streamed game on Twitch in the last 30 days. There was an average of 58,000 viewers at any time according to stream charts. Of course, not all game developers choose to implement real brands into each one of their games. For example, Rockstar. Rockstar did make Midnight Club LA, but in GTA 5 there are no real brands to be found. Not every brand has paid to be put in the game either. Take a look at Forza for example. Forza is a massive racing franchise that has been around since 2005. To my knowledge, Forza has never been paid to put a brand in a game. Instead, Forza is being forced to pay royalties to each manufacturer in order to gain the rights to use your favorite cars on the track. This is usually the case for most racing games. I do, however, have to say that all of the previously mentioned ways that consumerism has wiggled its way into the games that I love and play, I much prefer the ads mentioned earlier in this video compared to the pop-up ads in mobile games. Mobile games were a fun pastime for me riding the bus in middle school, but being able to find a game that doesn't fully ruin itself by bombarding you with ads is like finding a needle in a haystack. My annoyances aside, I hope you liked the video. Please consider subscribing and I'll see you in the next one.